Hello, this is Camille, and I'm going to share with you the presentation that we gave last night at the community meeting for Collett's Corner. A little roadmap here. We're going to go through the mission as it's written in the Constitution, plant a seed for what values we want to agree to have in common, and we'll talk through what it means to be a shareholder. We'll also starting to seek directors, and we're going to go into some detail around that. We'll share with you how the timeline is adjusted given the close of the equity crowdfunding campaign. We'll go into more detail around what our next steps are and what our work is for this coming year. We'll also share a draft outline of the questions that will be circulating to all shareholders in a survey and get your input and see if there's any questions we're missing. And we will then close with just some shout outs for what we could potentially be working on collectively and where we might ask you to support with the project. So let's get started. The mission for the company. The Collett's Corner is a mission-driven company, and that's a slightly different approach to some of, let's say, the business-as-usual companies from the last century, which are usually for-profit, and so shareholders are expecting a profit in a company, and that's what's been governing companies largely for the last century. And we're seeing a shift towards mission-driven companies that are often called social enterprises. And the mission for Collett's Corner as a mission-driven company is outlined in our Constitution. And I would suggest, if you haven't already read that, to read it through. It was established over a year ago when we were starting to set up what this company is for. And we can obviously revisit this as shareholders if we wanted to fine-tune it. But right now, some of the bigger, more important things to bear in mind is that this is a mission-driven company. So when we are a group of shareholders, we're actually collectively holding a common mission. I won't read this to you. You can pause this video if you want to read that to yourself. And it can always be found in the Constitution, which is on the company's office and also on our website. I'm basically planting a seed here for a conversation that I would like to have together at our annual general meeting in August. But I find it extremely helpful to have values that we agree to be shared between us. They're often used as a means by which to create an intention that we hold together and to how we're going to treat one another. Values can be anything from integrity to trustworthiness to joyousness. And I'd like us to co-create those and establish what those values are going to be for Collett's Corner. I have my own values that I use to govern my own, let's say, behaviors in life. Such as integrity and understanding and of those things, but I don't necessarily project my values into this company, and I think we should determine what those are together. So I would ask everyone to start to think about what those values could be, and then we'll send around a survey, and please, if you could, share what you think the core values of Collett's Corner should be as we agree to use them collectively to guide us. And then in the AGM in August, we'll decide those together, and we'll choose somewhere between 3 and 5. We're going to move to essentially what it means to be a shareholder here in a minute, but first a little bit of a summary at the close of the equity crowdfunding campaign, which ran for 6 weeks, and 1 week of that was private for Littleton or Harbor Basin residents only. And we had about 5,040 shares, or 5,040 shares were sold for $504,000, and of that, there's approximately 350 shareholders, and people invested anywhere between $100 and $50,000. And of the total investors, there's approximately 80 of which are from the Harbor Basin, which is just under 25%. Because we're still verifying people's identities and because we're still collecting payment, this isn't complete yet, but this is the rough numbers as they're coming in right now. Once we have verified everybody's identities and have payment collected and updated the company's register, we will complete these statistics and share them with all shareholders. So in order to become a shareholder, there's a couple processes that have to happen in the background, first with Pledge Me and then with Collett's Corner Limited. So what's happening right now is basically Pledge Me is verifying every shareholder's identity to ensure that they're New Zealand residents. and they are collecting payment, and then what happens is in batches they transfer those to Collett's Corner Limited. And so we received our first batch today, and what we're basically doing now is updating the share register. Then we'll update the company's office, and they'll verify that the update is complete, and then we will notify shareholders that you are now officially a shareholder. So you can expect to see those emails in the near future, if you're one of the shareholders listening to this. We had a number of parents who purchased shares on behalf of their children, and so the way that this works now, because you couldn't purchase shares if you were 18 or if you were under 18 years of age, basically what you can do now is you can get the transfer form from me, and you can fill that out, and you can put those shares into your children's name. And any shareholders in the future who want to transfer shares, you can use that same form. Because we knew that there was a number of parents who were investing on behalf of their kids, we're not charging for that right now. But in the future, starting on June 1st, we will start to put a $30 fee for the transfer because there is a cost associated to it. The number one question I get right now is, can I still buy shares? And so we had a lot of people that came to the equity crowdfunding campaign a little bit too late, and it's already closed. And so officially, no, there's no shares for sale, but there are a couple things that people can do if they're interested to invest. One, we are collecting names to go into the investor register. So if you are somebody who missed out, or if you would like to be informed of future investment opportunities, you can drop me an email and I'll include you on that register. What you will then be notified with is if shares become available, and there's three possible ways that might happen. One, first off, for people who pledged but perhaps for whatever reason don't pay or don't live in New Zealand, those shares can be offered. And so there may be a small number of shares that could go to people who missed out. And so if you're on that register, you'll be notified. And the other one is, there's obviously no guarantee with that. And then the other one is if existing shareholders decide they actually don't want to be shareholders, they can get in touch and they can be what's considered a willing buyer, and we can share with them the willing investors, or the willing a willing buyer and a willing seller can be introduced. And we can't facilitate that in any way, but we can provide you with a transfer form, and you guys can do whatever you need to in order to reach an agreement. And exchange payment and otherwise, and then you can just tell us through completing a transfer form and signing that and providing that back to us. So those are the two ways currently that you might have to buy shares. And then in the future, if, and I really underscore the if, because there is no guarantee that we're going to do another crowdfunding campaign, but if we do another crowdfunding campaign, we'll make sure to let everyone know. We will let obviously everybody on the investor list know well in advance, but we will also be singing that from the rooftops, just like we did with the last crowdfunding campaign. We had one question at this time in the meeting last night when somebody asked if existing shareholders would be have the opportunity to invest before anyone else if we did another equity crowdfunding, and we can certainly look at that. Other equity crowdfundings have done that. So existing shareholders have first rights to investment, and then that could open up as an offer to others. Shareholding rights are outlined in our Constitution, which again is online at the company's office and or on our website. Essentially, the way that it works is if you own one share, you have one vote. If you own 10 shares, you have 10 votes. And so if we ever do hold a vote, or when we hold a vote, votes will be cast relative to the number of shares that you own. Votes are cast based on special resolutions. This is all part of the Companies Act. The main one that might happen, if we amend our Constitution, for instance, it goes out to all shareholders to agree an amendment. If you can read these things here in front of you. The other one that often happens with companies is if we do any major transactions. That is, a major transaction is defined as if we do anything that is equivalent to over 50% of the assets within the company, that becomes a shareholder resolution or a special resolution that would go to all shareholders to vote on. So you can start to familiarize yourself with your rights, and these things will start to come to you if, in fact, we have votes on special resolutions. Now, for the day-to-day operations of the company, it's up to the directors to appoint the team, and they will be making the major decisions that will be guiding the everyday operations of the company. and direction of the company. So to talk a little bit about the directors, we can appoint up to 5 directors for Collett's Corner. The investor shareholders can appoint one of those directors, and the founding shareholders can appoint up to 4 directors. Now there's a reason for that. It's ultimately that, well, essentially Ohu Development and myself are founding shareholders, and we're ultimately responsible for making sure that this building gets built. And so what we're doing is we're making sure that by being able to appoint those 4 directors, we can ensure that we have the right skills at the table to guide the company. Once the building is complete and opened, in the Constitution you'll see that we can also divest those voting rights to appoint directors to investor shareholders. And I have every intention of making sure that when the company is open, that all investors have the opportunity to appoint all directors. And so that will be coming once the building is complete and operating. Let's see. The other complexity to this is Ohu Development, which is the company that's leading Collett's Corner, is also seeking directors. And so it's very likely that Ohu Development's directors will be Collett's Corner's directors in the first instance. And then as Collett's Corner grows, it will start to have its own directors and be its own self-governing entity. We have drafted a full description of the roles that we're seeking for Ohu Development. That's on our website, and we'll include that in this when we send out this presentation as a link. If you can help us find appropriate directors, we would be sincerely appreciative of any suggestions. And at the AGM, one director can be appointed by all shareholders. So any directors that are put forward by shareholders, we'll make sure, obviously as long as that director wants to be a director, that they can be voted on at the AGM in August. So please help us find directors if you can. This is a slide to share with you the shift in the program. So if we had reached the $2 million target, we would have been able to complete the building by 2020. What that money would have allowed us to do is re-engage the full design team and commence the detailed design. But because we haven't raised that $2 million, we're shifting the things that would have otherwise been happening in parallel with the current work back until we can do another investment round, which would be in about a year's time. What we can do with the $500,000 is complete the resource consent, pre-sell, and pre-lease the building. And what those 3 things will do is de-risk the building. So once we have leases in place and once we've pre-sold apartments and completed our resource consent, the development is far less risky, and so people will be more likely, and banks will be more likely to invest and loan on this project. So come about a year from now, next February, March, and April, we'll be doing another investment round, and that could be equity crowdfunding, or it could be through conventional loans. We will know when we get closer to that what the right thing is to do. A lot of that has to do with us reevaluating our financial model and looking at the consequences of the shift in our timeline here. You'll see that what you can now project is the building will be completed in the middle of 2022 due to the setbacks of not raising the $2 million. But we will for sure obviously still complete the building, which is exciting. The things you can help us with is, and to move this project faster, if we pre-sell and pre-lease the building faster, then we can move this whole building, can get built faster. So if you want to help us as shareholders, help us find people to lease the building and help us sell the building. We'll be preparing a brochure, and that'll be coming out in around June of this year. So once that's available, we'll obviously share that with all of our shareholders, and if you could share that wide and far, that would be great. The things that we're currently working on, which I just mentioned in the program, but just emphasizes the resource consent. First, what's up on that right now is we received some council feedback, which was quite constructive. Basically, in very short order, they said that the building is too singular in its identity, given the grain of Littleton is a much smaller, finer grain. And when you stand on the site and you imagine that building, it's true, it's quite monolithic and quite dominating of the street corner. And so what we've done is we've taken that as an opportunity to reevaluate the facade, particularly in its design, And we're looking at doing different facade materials that will break up the front and allow it to be kind of a smaller, more in proportion with the rest of the street. The other thing that we're looking at right now is to flip the courtyard so that it's actually fronting London Street. And what that'll do is it'll also make it appear like it's two smaller buildings rather than one continuous large facade. The courtyard will also then have access to sun. Right now where it's located, it has access to the view, which is beautiful, but it would be quite dark even in the summer, and so it wouldn't be very warm. So we think that the courtyard might be more active if it has the solar exposure. So you'll start to see these changes. We will share those with you via an email so everybody is informed about them. And then what we're doing is updating our resource consent application, which is 90% complete, and we will be submitting the application in early May. Depending on how long these things take, it could take up to 6 months for approval once it's lodged. We will know more once it is lodged. The next thing we'll do after we've got the resource consent submitted is we'll start to prepare a brochure both for leasing and for selling apartments, and then we'll start to circulate that and look for tenants for the building. With respect to selling apartments, we will start to host some gatherings for potential buyers for the apartments. The apartments are designed on co-living principles. Basically what that means is we have common ground among us, and so what we want to start to do is define what this kaupapa is effectively, and the only way to do that is start to bring people together and figure out what it is that's common among the group of people that would like to live there. And so we'll start to host those meetings come next month, and we'll probably host 2 or 3 of them to better get an understanding of the character and the kind of people who want to live there, so we can better design the apartments to support those people. They will all be 1-bedroom and studios, that's a given. But there's going to be more in the way of what's shared in common among the people that live there. And we just haven't defined that yet, and we won't define that without getting a better understanding of the people that are interested in living there. The one thing that's a given is for sure there will be a shared rooftop deck, which is around 200 square meters and obviously has beautiful views in all directions. So. But there's more to it when we talk about shared things, and we'll talk about that more in those meetings, which will be publicized. One of the things we would love to do, and we will do in the near future, is send out a survey to find out a little bit more about all of the shareholders and to better serve our community. So these are the draft questions of the things we thought we would ask, and it would be really helpful if you, while you're listening to this, if you have any other questions you might send us. We'll send this survey within the next week, so if you do hear this in the next week and you have questions that come to mind, please let me know. If not, I'll hold on to your questions, and if we do another survey round, I'll make sure to include them if it seems appropriate then. Yeah, I'm not going to read these through. If you want to read them yourself, you can pause the video and read them. And we'll close with this one. OWU's namesake is people working together. So at every turn, what we're looking for is how do we do that well, and how can we continue to hold ourselves to account of what we're here to do, which is to work well together and to build communities. So the things that I can think of right now, and there may be others, but the things that could be really helpful in this coming year is to help us identify potential directors. And when the apartments are available for sale, it's to tell your friends about them, and or when we start to do our gatherings for potential, let's say, residents, it would be great if you could share this with people so that we can make sure to start to really design them for the people that would live there. And it would be great once we have the brochure completed to help us find the right operators for the building. The people that are running the businesses there will really give a lot of character to the building, so we really want to find the right people to run the businesses. So it'd be great if you could help us find them, particularly that wellness center, because it's going to be our anchor for the overall project and really give a lot of identity and character to this building. So we want to make sure that the business owner really understands the desires and the missions behind Collett's Corner. And I underscore if we do another crowdfunding campaign, please share and invest in it with your friends. And that won't be for another year, but hold on to your hats with that one. That's a close on the meeting that we had last night. If you have any questions or if anything comes up for you, please feel free to email me. We also have a live Q&A that I've just jotted down what the questions were from the meeting and other questions that have come in through email, and you can click on the link that's associated to this presentation and go to that. Thank you very much for your time.